Hello, everybody. Today, I want to talk with you about how you can lose that extra weight naturally just by eating with the sun. And you don't really have to change your diet as much. Like we can always work on our diet, and our diet is important. But actually, one of the bigger issues of why you can't lose the weight has to do with your timing and how you're eating. So let's talk about it. We've all heard the expression, you are what you eat, but have you ever heard you are when you eat? So, what if I told you that when you eat is more important than what you eat? So we've all been drilled into us that we need to count our calories. We need to make sure we're getting so many grams of protein and carbohydrates. And there's all these like numbers that we're supposed to count. And we need to eat so many different types of food a day. And while it is important for us to eat healthy, whole food, and I don't want to take away from that, as far as losing weight and our like having a healthy digestion, that actually has more to do with when we're eating. And if we are aligning our eating schedule with the sun, then this is like tapping into our own circadian rhythm and our own clock genes. And so I'm going to show you how you can do this. But first, let's talk about the typical American eating habits for a second. So, this is something I think that we're all guilty of, and not everything on the list that you'll be guilty of. We don't necessarily do all of these things, but everyone's guilty of some of these things, and or at least has been. So, skip breakfast or eat too little. So, this one's a big one for me. I will just forget to eat breakfast. I don't know. It'll be like 11 o'clock, and I'm like, what happened? I forgot to eat. And then at this point, I'm usually kind of shaky and kind of scrambling, like I need to get food into me quickly. And another thing people will do is they might eat breakfast, but they'll just like eat very little and then they're running off to work. And so they're just really not taking the time to make sure that they get enough nutrients or that they even take the time to put nutrients into the body before they start their day. And it's not necessary to have like a big giant lunch or breakfast, but it is good. So some of us are going to need a bigger breakfast than other people. So you kind of have to figure out your body type. If you're more of a kapha, and you can always look up your dasha by going online. There's a million online webs or online tests that you can take to figure out what your dasha is. But if you're more of a kapha dasha, then just having some fruit for breakfast might be enough to sustain you. If you're a pitta, like you're definitely going to need to eat and eat a lot of food. And then if you're a vata, then it could be varied. It could be somewhere in between the two. And so just paying attention to your own body and what you need in the morning. But this isn't necessarily when we need the biggest meal of the day. And then, because also, just a note, it's called breakfast because we're breaking the fast. And so we don't necessarily want to go in with like this big giant meal to break the fast. We're thinking about it more as a way of like getting the digestive system warmed up and ready for the day. And then another thing we do is we skip lunch, or again, we eat too little. So I hear this all the time. I don't have time. I'll skip lunch. So I'll just work through lunch or, I just have a quick like salad for lunch. And we're just eating very little at lunch. And the problem with this is that this is when the sun is the highest in the sky, when our digestion is the strongest. And it's also when we need the most fuel to get through the rest of the day, because we still have a lot of day to go at this point, and we need to make sure that we are putting the nutrients into the body and the extra energy that we're going to need to get through. And most of us are just skipping this point. And this is when our digestion is the strongest. So this is when we should be taking advantage of eating. And so actually this is when you want to have your biggest meal. We'll just get right to it. And then Another thing we do a lot is we'll snack all day. And usually this happens because we didn't eat breakfast and we didn't eat lunch or we didn't eat enough. And now we're hungry. And so we're snacking until dinner. And then at dinner, we have like a big, huge meal. And a lot of us actually will eat even after like 7 p.m. And when we have our biggest meal for dinner, we're basically setting ourselves up to have to digest the most amount of food before we're about to go to bed. And the reason this is a problem is because when we go to bed at night, this is when our digestion gets a break. And then the liver can go in and do the deeper cleaning. And this is how we kind of like move the fat cells through the body. This is how we get those extra toxins out and just the extra things that maybe didn't process throughout the day. If we go to bed on an empty stomach, then the digestion has the time to really clear everything out, and then we will start the day with a clear digestive tract. If we're eating after 7 p.m. and we're eating our biggest meal at that point, by the time we're going to bed, we haven't fully digested our food. And we're going to bed with food in the belly, and then this food doesn't get digested. And then the body doesn't go in and do the deeper cleaning. And then we wake up bogged down from the food that we ate the night before. And then this is another reason why we might not be hungry for breakfast. So this is kind of like a cycle that we get into. So I want to talk about how to change this up and why. So timing matters, and obesity researchers are finally catching up to what Ayurveda has been saying this whole time, and that when we eat might be the actual link in weight management. And then another interesting point is that in the morning, our glucose tolerance is higher. And so we can actually have more of those complex carbohydrates at this time. And so having oatmeal for breakfast is a really good idea because it's going to give us like that sugar spike and that fuel that we need to get through the morning, wake up the digestive system. And we have that glucose tolerance to process that in the morning. And if we sometimes don't satisfy ourselves with the complex carbohydrates in the morning, then we will crave them in the evening. But if we have those in the morning, we're going to be less likely to crave those in the evening. And then in the evening, the body prepares for lipogenesis or fat storage. So if you eat a lot of food at the end of the day, then the body, when we go to sleep, it's preparing for that fat storage. And if there's a bunch of food there, then it's just going to automatically store that food as fat. And if we've actually burned through more of the food and we have a clear system, then the body's not going to store that food as fat. So let's talk a little bit about hunger hormones as well, because this ties to how timing matters. And so the first hormone we're going to talk about is ghrelin. And this is produced in the stomach and is the only hormone that stimulates the appetite. And when you eat, then you are training the body to produce this hormone. So this is why we want to eat at the same time every day. And then that way we will signal to the body that this is when we eat, and the body will prepare to eat at that time. And so it's just a great way of grounding ourselves through the day. It keeps us very aware of where we're at in the day as well, because we know when we have our breakfast, that is the morning. We know that when we have lunch, that is the afternoon. Like it keeps our body in alignment with where the sun's at. And so it just keeps us more aware of being connected to our environment around us. And when the body knows what's coming next, the nervous system is able to be in more of a rest and digest state as well. And so having this hormone come on every day at the same time is really good to regulate your eating habits and your nervous system as well. And then this this hormone also tells the body when to store fat. And if you eat at night, you're going to produce this hormone because remember, when you eat, it is training the body to produce this hormone at that time because your body wants to be very regulated. And if you are eating at night and you're training yourself to produce this hormone at night, then you are going to store that food as belly fat before you go to bed because you're going to produce that hormone at like if you eat every night at like 8 or 9 o'clock, you're going to produce that hormone at 8 or 9 o'clock. And then anything you eat at that point is going to be stored as fat. That's just how it works. And then the next one, leptin is released by fat cells to tell the body when you've had enough food and it's time to stop eating. So we have this hormone that tells us when we're full. And this was considered a really big scientific discovery because they thought that maybe this would help if they could figure out how to get more leptin released into the body, then this would tell us to stop eating. And so this was a way of like maybe overcoming obesity and overeating. But what actually happens is the more body fat that you have, the more leptin is released. And so actually, that doesn't really work that way. And the reason for this is because we can develop a leptin resistance, especially by eating late at night. And so even though we're producing this hormone, the body does not process it and say, oh, it's time to stop eating. We build like a resistance to it. And we are especially susceptible to build a resistance to leptin when we're eating late at night, because after the sun goes down, we are less likely to get these signals and we are more likely to overeat. And so if we are eating late at night, then our odds that we're eating more than we actually want to are really high. And by doing that, we're just becoming more and more leptin resistant at the same time. So it's kind of like this downward spiral with both of these hormones if we are eating late at night. So the sun is the master clock, and I put a sunflower in the picture here because the sunflower actually follows the sun throughout the day. And so if you've ever had sunflowers, you will watch the head of the sunflower like turn to the sun all day. And so the flower actually moves with the sun and follows the master clock. So let's talk about what that would look like for us as sunflowers. So we would have breakfast within a couple hours of waking. And this is when we are breaking the fast. I mentioned that earlier. So we don't necessarily need to have a big meal at this time. Like a small meal is perfect. And then lunch around noon. So breakfast is important, and we want to make sure that we eat something. It doesn't need to be that big. The most important meal that you're going to have for the day is actually going to be lunch. And lunch needs to be the biggest meal because when the sun is the highest in the sky, this is also when our digestion is the strongest. And so this is a really good easy rule of thumb. And no matter what, wherever the sun is highest in the sky, that is going to be when is the best time for you to eat. And we want to make sure that we're getting enough fuel and enough food to get through the rest of the day. So this is a good time to splurge and have the extra calories or to have maybe that cheeseburger or whatever you've been craving instead of having it at night because you're going to have that extra digestion power to process it, and it will actually help you not want the cheeseburger later that night. If you have a heavier meal and you don't have to have a cheeseburger every day for lunch, that would be silly. We don't want to eat necessarily like that, but I mean, if you're gonna eat like that, definitely have it for lunch because once you've had that like heavier meal for lunch, you're not craving the heavier meal for dinner. And you'll see that right away that, oh, I ate like something heavier for lunch. So now actually I'm kind of craving more like a soup or rice and vegetables. And then again, dinner no later than 6 p.m. because after 6 p.m., we need about 4 hours to digest our food before we go to bed. And if you're eating after 6 p.m., you're not giving your body enough time to digest all the food before you go to bed. And whatever food is not digested before you go to bed is not going to get digested. And then it is just going to sit there and it is going to ferment and get old and cause gas and bloating. And if we are making sure that everything is digested before we're going to bed, then the body can go in and do that deeper work. Okay, so let's just go over a few do's and don'ts just to make sure I really drive these points in. So a good rule of thumb is eat when the sun is up and don't eat when the sun is down. So that is number one rule. And let's just go through a few more do's and don'ts. So don't skip breakfast. Remember, lunch is the biggest meal. Eat your lunch at noon or when the sun's the highest in the sky. So anytime, sometimes I eat, a little more around 1, totally fine. Splurge on lunch. Like that's when you want to have the extra fat and the, thing that you've been craving that maybe you're not supposed to have or whatever. Stop snacking all day. So I cannot emphasize this enough. Before I did I did an Ayurveda cleanse for the first time a couple years ago, and I did not realize how much I snacked all day until I couldn't snack, and I realized that I had this like oral fixation that I constantly needed to be putting food into my mouth, which I had no idea. And that was almost like realizing that I had like that was kind of like my comfort thing that I would do is snack throughout the day. And when we're snacking all day long, we then our digestion is just always digesting and it never has a break and it never gets through all the food. And it's just constantly working. And this is not good for our body because when we're putting all of our energy into the digestion, then we can't put energy into other areas. And so that is how we become more and more depleted. And so actually snacking is depleting you and not helping you. So what I did, because I am the type of person, I'm a Vata Pitta. And so I need about 4 meals a day in order, otherwise I'll get a little bit shaky. So what I do, and sometimes in the winter, I don't need this as much in the summer. So just kind of noticing with your own body type as well. I don't need to snack as much in the winter, as I've noticed, but I will designate like a 3 o'clock snack time. So I'll have my lunch around, noon, 1 o'clock, and then somewhere between 3 and 4, I will sit down and I'll get, an actual snack put together, maybe a little bit of fruit and some nuts or something. Or maybe it's rice and vegetables. Sometimes it's actually like more of a meal because I get hungry, especially in the summer. And so this way, I'm giving myself at least 3 hours between lunch and dinner of my snack to let my food digest. So I'm not constantly eating throughout the day. And so notice if you find yourself to be a snacker and begin noticing how much you snack and see if instead you can reduce that down to one like sit down snack time, not a standing up, shove food in my mouth snack time, but like an actual sit down. It's almost like a meal. Okay. Eat dessert at lunch. So this is such a great idea. And if you have that chocolate or that dessert, if you crave sugar and you have that at lunch, then you are probably not going to crave it as much at night. If you, find yourself craving sugar around 8 or 9 o'clock, then try and have it earlier in the day. Give yourself that special little treat. Sit down, be fully present with your dessert and take in every bite and try and be as like grateful and appreciative of every bit of that sugar and the great taste and just really be present with it. This also helps to train the body to, enjoy our food more and to be more present with our food. And then another option is you can have easy to digest foods for dinner. So dinner is a great time to have, cooked vegetables, rice, soups, foods that are softer and more cooked. Think or things that can go in a bowl, something like that. And then we also want to eat a smaller meal at dinner. So for me, it's like I know I have two boys. I know they want a big dinner and they're just hungry. Like I can't feed them enough food, okay? So easy to digest foods for them at dinner. Like I'm not really thinking about that. I'm thinking more about how like I can feed them. So what I'll do is I will just have a smaller portion for dinner. I'll just eat whatever they're eating and I just have smaller portions of it. But it's not necessarily always going to be soup or something easy to digest. But if you don't have other people that you're cooking for, you are just cooking for yourself, this is a great idea. If you are cooking for other people and everyone's having a really hard time letting go of these like heavier meals at dinner, but you want to let go of them, that one of the best ways that I've been able to find a compromise here is again, I'll just eat either a smaller portion or if it's just completely like I don't eat meat. So sometimes I'll just make a really bad meal for them and then I'll just do rice and vegetables for myself. And so these are just some ideas I have to kind of like, because there is reality. There's what you like, there's what's ideal, and then there's what's real. And we have to be in reality. And for some of us, we're going to have to keep making big dinners for our, children and our husbands and other people that are like, no, I want to keep eating a lot of food really late at night. Just kidding. But it's all about just working with where we're at and coming up with as many ideas as we can to implement these ideas. And one of the best ways for me is to just make what I've always been making and just have a smaller portion. No food after 6 p.m. So if you can do this, that is fantastic. This will be one of besides eating your biggest meal at lunch, no food after 6 p.m. will be one of the biggest benefits for your weight loss that you will have. And your body will just, I promise you, if you just eat that bigger meal at noon and you stop eating so much for dinner and you stop eating after 6 p.m., the weight will just naturally fall off of you. And if you are the type of person, especially at first, if you've been the type of person that, eats late at night, let's start by just having some fruit at that time. Another great option is warm milk. Sometimes I'll make like a golden milk. There's a ton of different recipes. You can buy different packages of golden milk. There's a lot of different churnas in Ayurveda that you can make that you can put into a milk. I like to do a coconut milk with um or not cumin, cardamom, turmeric, cinnamon, ashwagandha, clove, ginger, and I'll put brahmi in it. And I'll do a little bit of milk, a little bit of ghee, and I'll warm it up in the over the stove. And then I'll drink this when I'm like in the bath or just like around 8 p.m. at night. It just kind of helps me calm down. And I do again have like oral fixation issues. I love snacking. And so this is a really great method for me is just have like a warm milk at night. It also helps if you have cravings for dessert. This warm milk can kind of help subsidize that, or just having a little bit of fruit can help too. So I would love to know if you think that any of these ideas could work for you. And if you would like to look at your eating habits further and have an Ayurveda consultation, then I would love to meet with you and you can email me and I'll see you in the next video.